That's a pretty powerful intro. So Brad, we've said you're the new guy. Can you tell us a bit about yourself? I could have done the intro, but I figured I'd let you introduce yourself and tell us who you are and how you came to be involved with Southeastern Children's Home, and what do you do there now for the last 2 weeks or so?
Sure, I sure can. I think I've got this working right. Well, number one, I guess I should be honored to be sitting in one of the first people to be sitting in one of these. That's great. That's great. So thank you for having me here and inviting me to sit in a chair. It's great. I love that. No, I did want to start before I answer that question. I want to say thank you to this congregation, and Larry may get into this in a few minutes if we have time. But I think what Southeastern Children's Home has with Summerville is a partnership. We have churches certainly that support us, and we can't do what we do without the support. But here it's a partnership, and that's evident with, we obviously have a board member who is part of our leadership, but the support that we've received from this congregation and so many folks here, it's more of a partnership. And I hope that y'all hear that you feel a part of what we're doing. And this video is evidence of just some of what we're able to do because of the partnership that we have with this church and you folks here. And so I want to take a few minutes after church today to meet some of you and get to know you a little bit. But I really just wanted to start by saying thank you. Thank you for the partnership that we have with this church and have had for many years. I do thank you for that. So Larry's right. I am the new executive director at Southeastern Children's Home. Robert Kimberly, of course, has been out here many times, and he is retiring. He's actually going to stay on with us a little bit. So retiring is maybe an overstatement. He's going to stay on and help us with our counseling center. So we are technically Southeastern Children's Home and Counseling Center. That's how I answer the phone when people call us. And Robert's going to stay on because of his licenses and his experience. There's a need in our community certainly, but in communities all across this country for counseling, for good Christian counseling, and we're looking to grow that. And so Robert's going to stay on and help us in that capacity. But he has retired from the executive director role, and I took over 2 weeks ago. What's interesting about that is I took over on a Friday, and we left for the beach on Sunday. So I spent half of my directorship on the beach.
Yeah.
So that's not as much of a vacation as it sounds. Every summer we take our whole program and our kids to Myrtle Beach to give our kids a vacation. And it's definitely a working vacation for our staff, but our kids have a blast. And so that's a good thing. But this is actually my second stint with Southeastern Children's Home. I was here back in the 2009 to 2012 time as a case manager and tutor. And then my wife and I and our two oldest children went to South America and planted a church in La Paz, Bolivia, and then came back. And about 5 years ago, Robert called me and said, do you have interest in looking at our Director of Social Services position, which was coming open? I said, I sure do. I wanted to get back into ministry after being in the mission field. And that's kind of how I came back to be with Southeastern Children's Home. Was I took on that role, and then the search process to find the successor for Robert has gone on now for quite some time. And then, like I said, like Larry said, Robert retired at the end of June, and here I am. So I'm just really excited to be in this role. Robert's done an amazing job in 32 years of leading this ministry, and many of y'all know that. He's left it in a really good place, and really, my goal is to, you don't want to fix what's not broken, and it's not broken. And so my goal is to just keep the train moving down the track and adding some things. The counseling center is something we need to grow, and we're looking to do that. So that's a long way of answering that question, but hopefully
And you're right, that process, I was on the personnel committee and on the search committee, and we spent a solid year, and we're really thankful that God picked you. We feel like we didn't have a whole lot to do with it, and it was as the process went on and on and on, it became increasingly obvious that there was no need to keep on looking outside our walls when we had the right guy in the building, and it's been great so far. We're really glad to have you. Yeah, so for those of us here who maybe don't know all about how it works, can you tell us something about what sort of ministry takes place at Southeastern Children's Home, particularly the house parent model and the things that make it unique?
Absolutely. So I like to tell folks that we're kind of like a foster home on steroids. And what I mean by that is we serve both boys and girls. Of course, in that video, we interviewed just some of our former female residents, but we do have on campus a boys' house, a girls' house, and then also a relief cottage where our children go when our house parents get their time off each month. But as Southeastern Children's Home, we are a home, a residential group home facility for kids who have been abused, neglected, all kinds of things, all kinds of trauma. And you heard some of those examples of the trauma that the kids who come to us, what they've experienced. And so that right now is our main focus, is the 3 group homes we have on campus, and then we have one that's off campus about 10 minutes away from our main campus. But our role and our mission is to serve those children, to help them through their trauma, and we use that house parent model that Larry said. And what that means is we have a mom and a dad. And in the case of our house parents right now, their children live in the house with them 24/7. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, except for their time off each month. But they're there. And we do that because we believe in that model, in a mom and a dad, committed to each other for life to help their children. And in this case, they have their own biological children, and then they have their extended family, which are these children that God has brought to us. And right now in our girls' house, we have 6 girls, and we have 5 boys in our boys' house. And looking to grow that. But that's our model, and that's our ministry model. Our house parents are there to minister, to study. Bible studies go on frequently. We are blessed right now with 2 house dads who are fantastic spiritual leaders in these homes, and they're consistently opening up the Word, studying with our kids. We've had 17 baptisms since the COVID pandemic started, which is an amazing number, especially considering for however many months there wasn't church, or there wasn't in-person church, I guess I should say. And so that's our model, and we see it every day as a ministry, from our house parents to our direct care staff, to the therapists that we bring on campus. It is very much a ministry, but that's our model, is that house parent model where there is a mom and a dad couple in the house with these children every single day.
And can you tell us about how the kids go to church, youth group, PBC, the beach?
All that stuff. So our boys' house attends the Central congregation in Spartanburg. Our girls' house attends the Bowling Springs congregation. We're obviously a Church of Christ affiliated agency, so that's where our kids go, or to local churches of Christ. They're involved in the youth groups at these churches, very involved. Our boys just completed service week with the church where they attend, and then actually our girls are leaving right now to go to PBC for the week. And so we're involved in all that. And that's kind of what the summer looks like, would be the PBC trips and the beach trip that I mentioned just a few minutes ago. But they also attend regular public school during the school year. Education is a huge part of what we do. Had one of our children graduate just a couple of months ago, and we're excited about that. We also have an after-school tutoring program that we help these kids get back on track, because, and some of y'all may know this, if you're familiar with the foster care system at all, so many of these children have moved around, so much. Often when they come to us, they're on their 10th, 12th, sometimes 15th placement, and you can imagine what that does to them educationally. And so often, in fact, I can't remember the last time when we had a kid who came to us who wasn't at least a year or 2 behind in school. And so our after-school tutoring program, our summer tutoring program, helps bring those kids, back up to speed so that they can graduate on time. And we're really proud of that aspect. We have the young lady who graduated in June. She's going to start attending college here in the fall. And so that's just a little bit of what we do. We try to make life as normal as possible for these kids who really, frankly, haven't had a normal life. When you hear stories about, I poured a pot of beans on myself and no one was there to help me, from the scalding. That's not a normal childhood. And we try to normalize it as much as we can. And so providing the educational opportunities, providing opportunities for camp, for the beach, vacation for these kids, things like that. We really try to do that for them.
Yeah, it's always fun to see the pictures, and especially some of our kids have never seen a beach before. I mean, us in Charleston, you can't imagine that, but to have a young person who's never seen the ocean, that is always one of the highlights of the year, is seeing that come through the inbox.
And so just 2 weeks ago when we were at Myrtle Beach, we had 3 kids who had never seen the ocean at all. And so our practice has been, I don't know if you know this, our practice has been when we have that, I take a vote or, just get by show of hands, who's never seen the ocean before and 3 of them raise their hands. And so when we get to the beach, we unload our stuff and then we head out to the ocean. And those kids who have never had a chance to see the ocean, they're first. And so we try to capture that moment through pictures or video of those kids seeing the ocean for the first time. It's just really cool. It sounds kind of corny, I guess, but it's really cool.
Nothing corny about it. It's the best. So can you tell us a little bit about what you and the other staff members do just on a regular basis? I mean, day to day, week to week. I mean, what does the executive director do? What do our caseworkers do? House parents? What does a day in the life of someone who's in this ministry look like?
So our house parents, I'll start there, very similar to what you would do if you were a stay-at-home house parent, which is what they are. And a lot of that is the transportation back and forth to school, transportation to medical appointments, transportation to extracurricular activities. We have a few of our kids who are involved in extracurricular activities, sports. ROTC is another thing that some of our kids are involved in. We have a couple of children who are working, things like that. So there's a lot of the transportation, and you can imagine when you have 5, 6, 7 kids in a house, there's a lot of that back and forth that goes on, and then taking care of them in the evenings with meal prep and homework, and then trying to teach them independent living skills, all those things. And so from the house parent's perspective, it's a really, really busy job, and Robert would use the word house parenting is always. So they're always have something going on. From our main office perspective, there's me in the executive director role, and then we also have our development side. We have a development director, his name's Kurt Harbuck, who's been with us for a couple of years, who does an outstanding job, and we're hoping he'll be able to come down here and get to know you folks as well. But we also have our direct care staff, which consists of our case managers. We have a full-time case manager and then also a part-time case manager. And those folks function as a liaison, really, between our agency and DSS. There's a lot of requirements because of our state contract that we have with DSS. Paperwork that's involved, meetings that are involved, family reunification visits, if appropriate, which those often are. And our case managers work to take care of the kind of the paperwork side, the meeting side, the reunification side of what our kids need every day. So our direct care staff really functions to meet those types of needs that our children often have, because many of our children do come to us and there's a goal for them to either reunify with a parent or parents or with what DSS calls a kinship caregiver, and we work to facilitate that. A lot of our kids think that they're coming to us to stay indefinitely, and what we try to tell them is we want you here, we want you with us, but we really want you back with your family if it's appropriate and safe. And DSS, to their credit, really works hard, especially here over the last several years, have really made a commitment to trying to find safe and appropriate family members for some of these kids to go back to, and that's really a good thing, I think. And so our direct care staff works to do that, to help bring these kids back to a family member, or if there is a foster home, a forever foster home, we work to do those as well.
Cool. So is there a story you can tell us, that shows God working in the lives of one or more of our kids?
Yes, 1,000 if we have all day. I could
just pick one or two.
I'll pick a couple. One of the most exciting ones, and I've shared this with the board here recently, our board of directors, just because it's such an exciting one. We had a young man come to us about 3 years ago. I've never seen a child this young as depressed as this child was when he came to us. I have a 12-year-old, and she's got a bubbly personality, and she's ready to just go every day. This child, when he came, he was 12 and was diagnosed as severely depressed, and it was really hard those first few months to deal with him and to work with him. But I'm excited to report that 3 years later, he has been adopted by his house parents. So our house parents, who are currently with us in our boys' house, just finalized his adoption last month, which is an absolutely amazing story. And this is a child who, again, came to us with diagnoses and challenges and all kinds of trauma, and through just athletic involvement, playing football. He's wrestled, he's played lacrosse, he's done all kinds of things, and those are things that we've been able to provide because of support, by churches like this, and because of the commitment that his house parents had. But then they made a commitment beyond just the athletic field, and they made a commitment to him, to adopt him. And again, that was finalized just over a month ago, and it's just really, really an amazing story. And then another one, real quick, I briefly mentioned the young lady who graduated from high school at the beginning of June, currently working with a really good company locally, and then the plan is for her to go to college here in the fall and really better herself and her opportunities, because her past is pretty tragic. And by coming to us, she's been with us for a little over a year. We've really been able to open doors for her that otherwise they wouldn't have been open. And one of the biggest ones is the educational aspect, because graduating high school, getting that high school, earning that high school diploma, which she has, and she's worked hard, and then with the prospect of going to college, those are two of, again, if we had all day, I could keep going, but I'll stop.
Yeah, I was hoping you'd pick the one about the adoption. I didn't want to fish for it, but that was the one I was thinking.
It's
so
great. It's such a neat story.
That's cool. Yeah, that is super neat. The idea that he moved out of the group home room and actually is got the same last name as the house parents now. That is it's one of the ones that makes it really worthwhile.
Yep.
So,
that's right.
So when Robert retired a few weeks ago, I saw something I thought was really cool, and again, I'm hoping if I throw this out there that you'll take the bait. He got an award from a group called the 127 Network, and when I saw it, I thought that was the neatest thing. I didn't know we were part of the 127 Network. Can you tell us what the 127 scriptures are and what the 127 Network is, and how the Children's Home is part of that?
I absolutely can. I love this network. It's one of the things that over the last few years I've really grown to know and become more and more involved with. But it is a network of Church of Christ child care agencies. It used to be the Christian Child Care Family Services Association, I think is what it called, but they changed the name to that. So if you have your Bibles with you and you want to flip to Genesis 1:27, 1 Samuel 1:27, and James 1:27, or look at those later, those are the scriptures, and that's why it's called 127. And you'll read those. If you read those scriptures, there's a progression throughout the Old Testament and into the New Testament of God creating male and female. And then in 1 Samuel, God gave this child to me as a gift. And then in James, where it's, okay, we're really called to minister to these orphans, and the widows are mentioned there also. And so that's why this network shows those three verses. The 127s, it's just really cool to see that thread through those three books. But it's a network of Church of Christ agencies all over the country. We were just at the conference. It was in Orlando, where Robert received his kind of Lifetime Achievement Award, basically, is what that was, along with 5 or 6 other folks. But there are agencies all over the country. There's a children's home up in New York who comes down. There's a children's home in Colorado. There's several in Texas, Oklahoma, some in Tennessee. I could keep going, but it's this really, I would say close-knit network of folks and child care agencies affiliated with Churches of Christ. And that's our mission, is to help children. Some of them are group homes like us. Some of them are strictly foster care agencies like Agape in Nashville. And then some of them do other types of work. But the bottom line, the thing that kind of unites us all, is the child care aspect, that we are involved with child care in one way or the other. And so I'd encourage you to Google that. Just a really, really neat network that I think Robert initially, is the one that got us involved in all that through some of his connections. There's a yearly conference, and then those of you who through your work network, there's for ministers, there's ministry networks and youth ministry networks and things like that. And for us, it's such a niche kind of job that we do, where you can't really understand what we do each day unless you've done it. And so it's really neat to get together. And when we get together for those conferences, there's a lot of training that's involved, but there's also a lot of networking and then celebrating, like what we did with Robert and those other folks, celebrating what God has done through these agencies. I guess the bottom line, and maybe I'm taking too much time, but the bottom line is there are a lot of folks across this country affiliated with Churches of Christ who do what we do and do it really, really well. And none of them are able to do what they do without support, from churches like Somerville. And so that's it's really, when we get together, it's a celebration of all that as well.
Well, that leads me to the big one for us, I guess. Since I've been on the board, one of the phrases we've used over the last 8 years or so, we've talked about churches who support the children's home, and then we talk about children's home churches. And Somerville, I think, has been a children's home church, but from your perspective, what's the difference between being a supporter and being a children's home church?
I like to use that word partnership, and I think that there's a difference between support and partnering. And so what does that look like? Okay, because the fact is you're 3 hours from us. I drove into town on Wednesday. I made the 3-hour trip. Larry, for some of our board meetings, that's a long drive. I mean, I'll give it to you. It's a long drive. So how can this church continue to be a children's home church, which you absolutely are? Again, we really see this as a partnership. You absolutely are a partner with us in how we minister. And I think I would answer that question several ways. I mean, I look over here and I see your youth group is over here. We have many churches who, they may not be as far away geographically as you are, but they come in and do service work. And sometimes it's not just the youth groups, it's the youth group in conjunction with their parents or a work crew or whatever. One example is the Gold Hill Road Church up in Fort Mill. They come and do a work day with us a couple of times a year. Our campus is 55 plus acres. It's beautiful, but it's a big campus. It takes a lot of work. And so to have groups come in and help us just keep our campus looking good for our kids, for our visitors, for our volunteers and our guests to come out and to see the beauty of the campus that God's blessed us with. That's one way that immediately comes to mind, how we can just continue to grow that partnership with you. There's also, we do our change cans, which I know this church is involved in, the change can drive that we do annually. The last few auctions that we've done, some of this is due to COVID, has been on online auctions instead of in person. We may continue that, we may not. Your financial support is something, of course, that is a huge part of what we do. But I think what I would do, and I would open this up, and I'm gonna take some of Kurt Harbuck's thunder, because this has really been his idea as he's come into the development role. I want to invite you to come see us. Come out to our campus. Come, sit in my office and let me tell you these stories about these children that this church has helped bless. Come see our campus. Come walk through our group homes. Meet our house parents. We'd love to have you. And again, I know it's a 3-hour drive, but I think you'll find every minute to be worth it. And then you can maybe even see, okay, well maybe God's calling me to do this, to come out here, once a month or once every 6 months or something like that, and spend some time getting to know the folks here. And then I think lastly, your prayers. We use your table out here in the lobby to put some of our brochures and our newsletters. Then I've got some magnets that I'd encourage you to take with you and put on your refrigerator. And maybe every time you see that magnet on your refrigerator, you just stop and you just say a quick prayer for me, for our staff, for our children, for our board of directors. I think those are the types of things that really would just continue to grow and deepen and develop the partnership that we have with this church.
I think you're absolutely right. I mean, the prayers, of course, are the single most important thing we can give. And certainly as a congregation, we've got our Mission Sunday coming up in September, and a part of that always goes to Children's Home. But I think one of the things that separates a Children's Home congregation from a congregation that just supports the Children's Home is, regardless of how big the check is, and I think we saw this during COVID as well, there are folks that, obviously, I mean, we all took a hit, membership and such, and there are some that give whatever they give, even more than us, out of their excess, and then there are those that make it a priority, and the priority being not just the financial, but also the spiritual support. And it's been a blessing to be tied in with the Children's Home and with the children there, to know them through coming to Bible camp first, and then through the board, and through knowing you and Robert and Kurt and so many others. To actually have that as a priority and not an afterthought, to be something that's one of the first things we think of rather than the last. I'm really thankful to be part of a congregation that has, adopted these children in this way, and so because it takes all of us. One last thing I want to ask you before we try to get folks to lunch. So you mentioned we work with DSS and with state agencies. Right now we have a pretty good setup where they make referrals and they don't interfere with us in terms of we can take kids to Bible school, and we can take kids to Bible camp, and we can go to church. What'll happen if someday the government doesn't want to play ball with church agencies?
So is it I may date myself. Is it the $64,000 question? Is that the TV show? That's a great question. And the truth is, that day is likely coming. And I know that in some of the conversations that Robert has had with our board over the last few years, we're kind of bracing for it, but bracing for it with faith that God's going to take care of us. God's blessed Southeastern Children's Home for 50 plus years. And has taken us through some really, really dark times. And, we're not necessarily in what I would call a dark time right now, but we do need to be prepared. And you don't have to spend 5 minutes watching the news to not realize it. I mean, it's a fallen world, folks. I mean, this is the reason we're in this. We have children's homes at all is because this is a fallen world, and there's just a lot of junk that happens and affects children. And you think about how awful that is. Some of the stories we heard in the video, the fact that even exists is awful. And so I guess what I would say is we just need to be prepared. And there is going to come a day where they may say, you can't go to PBC. You can't take these kids to Somerville. You can't take these kids to Central. You need to hire folks in your agency who don't necessarily share your values. And I don't need to go into the details of what that might mean. That may happen. And what that may mean for us as an agency is we may need to go completely dependent. And what I mean by that is, our operating budget, a portion of that comes from supporters, congregations, churches, individuals, grants that we receive. But then another portion does come from our state contract with DSS. Some of the funding that we receive comes from that state contract. I believe that it's the desire of our board to eventually get free of all that and to be completely independent, which would be great. Then we would no longer have to worry about those questions, and that would be eventually where we would probably need to be to avoid any concern or any trepidation that we have about having to worry about who we hire or where we go on Sunday mornings or anything like that. We'd have to be completely independent. We're not there yet, but hopefully one day we will be there, and we can do that. But right now we're not there. I am pleased to report, there's so many caseworkers in South Carolina that want us because of our faith affiliation. They know that our kids are going to get good care. Our reputation, part of my job is to work on our accreditation, and that requires sending surveys out to folks. They call them they call them just people who are just a part of our agency, whether they're volunteers or they're employees. or they're folks who work out in the community who deal with us. Our reputation is solid. The feedback I get is great, and that's good. That's a great thing, and so much of that is because of just the level of care and the quality of care that we provide. And there are still a lot of folks, even in DSS, who say, I want to place with Southeastern Children's Home because of the faith component. That's where we are today. But again, the spirit of your question is, what about tomorrow or the years down the road? And the fact is it very well could happen, and we just need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, I think the old joke when they asked John Dillinger why he robbed banks, well, that's where they keep the money. And so right now, DSS has the referrals, they have the children, they are the pipeline for us to be able to do the best work. But I know, speaking for the board, if ever the time comes that we can't do the work the way that God wants us to do it, we'll serve less kids, we'll do whatever it takes, but we'll continue to serve kids in this way with this, faith connection until such time as God says no. And I really thank you guys for all that you do. I think that just about covers it. I mean, is there anything else you'd like to close with before I extend an invitation?
No, again, I think I would just say it again. I would just say thank you to this church. Thank you for having me out here this weekend. It's been great for me, but I just appreciate the support. I've got to spend a few minutes talking with some folks this morning. I hope to see many of you after church, but thank you for what you do. What we do is not possible without churches like this. So thank you.
Thanks.